Welcome back to the Finding Purpose podcast. My name is Adam. I am your grateful host. Thank you so much for everyone who's viewed all the previous episodes. Your support means so much to me. And, you know, the more views and the more reviews and the more engagement that I receive will allow me to share the stories of these amazing people that I feature to a broader audience. So it's super rewarding, and I'm really grateful for the support. You know, today I'm actually very lucky to have my friend Devonte Rosario here. Devonte and I met while we were both working an event that we collaborated on. It was the inaugural Willow Gala hosted by the Carlos Rodon Foundation. But, you know, I got to learn a lot about Devonte through this experience. Devonte placed first in Showtime at the Apollo. He has multiple TEDx speeches and more than 1 million views on Instagram. He is a world-class mentalist. And this is something that I was able to witness in person. And it was mind-boggling. So for me, the first question I always ask is, I'd love to know the story behind the man and what drove him for that to be his talent and his gift that he provides to the world. So, Devonte, pleasure to have you, man. It was a great event. You made the event. Everyone who I've spoken to about the event has been like, the coolest part was the show at the end with Devonte. And, you know, I'm grateful that you were able to come here today.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you for having me, and thank you to those people, man. It was an amazing time, and so here we are.
Here we are. You know, as I just said, you know, like I'd love to just jump into, you know, your story. You know, I know you're from Brooklyn. And you come from a big family. Maybe we could just jump right in and just tell me what that was like in the early life.
Yeah, it was growing up in Brooklyn in the I was born in '89, so in the '90s. You know, lots of brothers and sisters. You know, my parents on my mother's side, I had 2 brothers and 1 sister. On my father's side, 2 brothers, 1 sister.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And raised with you know, my parents were separated, but you know. It was cool. We grew up with food on our table, you know what I mean? You know, not rich and, you know, nothing like that, but 2 hardworking parents. And yeah, man.
That's awesome, man. Where's your country of origin, your parents?
I was born here. My mother was born in Ecuador, and my dad was born in the Dominican Republic.
Okay. And were they the first of your family to come to the States, or?
Yeah, so right. So they, you know, both my grandparents on both sides came here, worked for a little bit, and then brought them over. So they both got here around, you know, after 6 years old, like 7. 8,
okay.
Yeah.
And what was that like? I mean, those are 2 beautiful cultures. How has that culture played a role in just who you are? I know that I come from a traditional background. My dad's Indian, my mother's Persian, and they're both first generation. And growing up, what was it like in your household? And obviously, you're growing up in this diverse community that is Brooklyn. How did you view your family when you looked at others also?
For sure. We were just talking about that earlier. You know, New York is such a melting pot that we don't really realize how much of a melting pot. And then even more so if you're in places like Queens and Brooklyn, which I was born and raised in Brooklyn, ended up living in Queens a majority of my life. And yeah, growing up in a Spanish household, right, or Latin household, however you want to say it, but Latino household or whatever, Spanish, whatever, Hispanic. There's so many things,
Yeah.
But to me, it was just you know, Spanish was my first language. Ended up learning English, so my parents spoke. You know, both households was predominantly Spanish. Every summer we would try to go to, you know. It wasn't like a family vacation. It was more like my mom would send me to Ecuador to sort of get a break, you know what I mean? And so she, you know, I was out there with family from out there almost every summer growing up. And on my dad's side, you know, my grandmother would take me to Dominican Republic, and so I got to see Dominican Republic as a, 4 or 5 year old.
Your dad's from DR?
My dad's from DR, yeah.
Nice, man. I love DR. I have a lot of Dominican friends.
Yeah.
I go to Dominican barber. I love Dominican barbers. Honestly, they're the best barbers. So it's like crazy. You know, it's funny because the first time I went to DR, they thought I was Dominican, and I landed.
I would have thought you're Dominican too.
People think that all the time, and I landed, bro. And we're standing at the airport in Santiago. We get out, and this woman on my flight comes up to me and thinks I'm a cab driver, and she's like, "Take me to my hotel," and I'm like, "Ma'am, let's split an Uber. Like, I just got off the same flight as you. It was ridiculous. And then when we were leaving the country, the woman at customs kept asking me for my Dominican passport. And I was like, no, like, I'm not Dominican. Here's my Mac. She's like, you're not. And I was like, no, I'm Indian. And I had to show her my passport. I was born in India. So it's so funny. But, like, I love just being there, man. We stayed in Cabarete, which is, I think, very close to Puerto Plata.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just so beautiful. But it was also very humbling, because the road from Santiago up to Cabarete, first of all, they drive like madmen. They're going like 40 on these curvy roads. There's kids running with bikes across the street. And then you end up at this resort, But like just kind of that bus ride was very perspective shifting when I saw the communities that we were driving through. How did that impact you when you were younger, like going to the communities that your parents grew up in and seeing how they might have grown up and then not seeing the life that you have?
I think that the influence is clear to this day. However, I think that as a kid, I don't maybe because I was exposed to it so young, it almost was it was just normal.
Yeah.
We weren't going to the resorts. Like I said, this wasn't a family vacation. This was going to see my family that still lived in Ecuador, that still lived in DR. So they still lived in a lot of these conditions. So when you are introduced to that world from that perspective, you actually don't see you don't only see the grittiness. You also see a lot of the beauty. For sure, the grittiness. So there's a lot of stories and stuff of robberies in the hood. You know what I mean? And like my cousin got his sneakers taken, and like for sure, like the violence, like there was gonna be a shootout. Like so, a lot of for sure stuff that goes on in the ghettos of the world. But as far as like the absolute poverty, you know what I mean? The always living in need. That like I said, it definitely was something that we grew up around, and we were very much aware that like my grandparents had just like we were still trying to, what I mean, like make it, like we would just I think we were good because we had left, and by we I mean like our grandparents, like they were better off because they had gotten here, but here they had not, they were starting from in Brooklyn, you know what I mean? It wasn't like we, you know what I mean? We were starting from the bottom here. So it was part of how I saw and has been how I've colored life, that is part of life.
Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. And it's so funny because, my dad's from India, and the first time I went to India, it's like I'd compared it to vacations, and he has 3 brothers out there. He had 3 brothers out there, 3 sisters. And the first time I went, I was maybe like 10, and my family over there is all military, and we got picked up in like this military van, and we got shuttled off to, like living like they live. And same experience where it's like, okay, like this is how it is. And I enjoyed it, the simplicity of it, frankly, where you weren't overstimulated. No one was comparing each other to others as much as they do here. And they're really grateful for just like the things that they had. And I think that's like really shaped how I looked at things moving forward, where it's like that traditional values, and now I saw how people traditionally live. So when you were growing up in Brooklyn, you said your mom used to send you to Ecuador.
Yeah.
What was growing up in Brooklyn like for you?
Growing up in Brooklyn in the 90s was a dose of reality real young. You know what I mean? On all levels, you know what I mean? You get exposed to a lot young, violence, sex, drugs, real life, shootouts,
wild
fights outside. Hell yeah, everywhere. You know what I mean? Like,
you have any good stories?
I mean, you could be here all day. Like I said, shootouts. You know what I mean? Dead bodies. Being a kid and being like, "What the fuck is this?" Like, you know what I mean? I wasn't there when it happened, but coming back from school and seeing the ambulance and this, one can say it's traumatic, but I don't. I think to me again, it was just being exposed to a lot because that is part of the world, right? I mean, this is part of what happens. It's not what we want to happen. And Brooklyn has, and I've also have lived a life of seeing the the complete sort of transformation of Brooklyn.
Yeah.
From that to now it's the most expensive building on the block.
What part of Brooklyn?
Bushwick.
Bushwick. Okay. Yeah, it's a lot different than it was in the 90s, for
Facts.
sure.
And even Williamsburg, East Williamsburg, or whatever the case is, now. But, Williamsburg, all that stuff, the places that the whole world wants to come and visit now and see, and with all the hot spots, it's like we grew up riding bicycles all through all through those neighborhoods.
What is it like seeing your community change so drastically?
Different feelings in different times of my life, Now I can reflect on it and just see it as part of life, you know what I mean? Life is constantly doing that. I'm sure that now that I look at Manhattan, I'm like, oh shit, this is probably what happened for some people in Manhattan. They saw it there was just probably the ghetto of where like immigrants came, and all of a sudden it became these like skyscrapers and rich neighborhoods, and most people got kicked out, if not all. So I feel like I got to now experience that. Now again, I'm saying that now from this eagle's eye point of view, but growing up in it at the beginning, it was, discomforting because your favorite spot just became an organic, yoga, Pilates.
Like a Sweet Green.
Yeah.
Like,
so it was just like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, too, because, like, Brooklyn's, like, now, like, kind of hipster. Like, that's what it's like.
Kind of.
All right.
It's the mecca.
It's the mecca of hipsterness, And it's so funny because, like, when you compare it to what it was, and, I think it was, like, really when the Nets went there. And, they were like, all right, we're going to build this, we're going to start making some money out of this borough. And they did. What are the, when you were growing up, you said you had siblings, you had four siblings?
Three on my mother's side, three on my father's side.
What were your relationships with your siblings like?
So I mainly grew up with, so my mom and dad had a split custody where I would spend basically the weekdays with my mom, weekends with my dad. That was me growing up pretty much my whole life. My dad wouldn't have kids really until I was like I don't know the exact age right now, but probably like over 10 for sure.
Yeah.
So my siblings that I grew up with are really on my mom's side. My brothers and my sister there. So growing up with them, I'm the middle child there. I'm neither the youngest, neither the oldest. And just played my position as the middle child. Yeah. I mean, growing up with a lot of kids.
Did you look up to your brothers?
Looked up to my brother for sure. He's somebody I still look up to. He set a really great example for how to be a man and how to I took a little different route. He was more like, I mean, he did his, I'm sure, teenage life and did his stuff, but I surely chose a little bit more knucklehead kind of path than he did. Yeah,
I mean, one of the things that you shared when you were talking about your performance at the event, you were like, listen, like I had this big family, and for me, I embraced the role of being the trickster. When did that start? And you were just like, oh, like I like doing this.
Yeah, I guess again that's just me having looked at my life now, realizing like, oh man, like I must have gotten really good as a middle child to get people's attention. You know what I mean? Because you're not the youngest, you're not the oldest, you're just one of the guys in the middle right now.
Yeah.
And I think that for sure there was a knack or a seeking unconsciously or consciously of how to grab people's and keep people's attention, and or how to get somebody's attention. And so for sure I feel that there was this like need of attention, and I think I want to say there's definitely a stemming from that where I got good at it.
Do you remember the first trick you played?
The first trick that I learned was the one that sticks out in my mind was the coloring book, just because I remember practicing it with my dad and then sitting in front of all my grandparents and stuff and doing it for them.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Was it like a magic trick, or was it like mentalism that you do now?
No. So mentalism will come up much later in my life. My first thing was, like I said, just trying to get attention, just trying to connect, just trying to just be seen. And on my father's side, I was able to get that sort of attention from my grandmother.
Yeah.
Right. And then going over to my mom's side, okay, maybe I would utilize, but it wasn't until I saw a magician maybe around the age of 7 or 8. And
where'd you see him?
At a summer camp.
Okay. And
I tell my dad about it, and then he gets me to a magic shop that he'd seen around in Manhattan somewhere. And eventually being taken to that magic shop, realizing, oh shit, there's like a way to learn magic. Like I didn't even know that was a thing, or that there's a place that sells magic. What is magic? And so the way they explained it to like a kid my age was like, well, you can learn this trick behind this coloring book that you show it with pictures. You snap your fingers. Now there's colors. You snap your finger one more time. All the pictures and the colors are gone. Snap your fingers one last time. Everything comes back. And I was like, oh man, and I can do this. And they're like, you can do this. And you learn the world of tricks and the world of, gimmicks and props, you know what I mean? And so that's what a magic shop is. Similar to what you might see in a children's magic show by a clown or something. He does a trick. He does something, that sort of grabs attention. And so I went home, practiced it, and within, a couple minutes, I was in front of my family showing them this thing. I would then find out that there's more to it than just the tricks. There's like performing and then blah, blah, blah,
Well, I think it's awesome because it's the part of the imagination that I'm not really tapped into, where I'm more of like that, honestly, like white collar, just, like I see facts and I'm good with people and relationships. But when it comes to tapping into that type of my imagination and seeing those kind of possibilities, I think that part of my brain's open.
Interesting.
What is it about like the rush of that first time showing that trick that was like, hey man, like I love this?
Again, something maybe I haven't fully thought about before in the past, but what comes to me now is that I think apparently, it's called finding purpose. And I think a lot of what I've been up to for a long time is connecting with people. And I think that it allowed me to connect to people. I think it was the first real, either them seeing me, I'm seeing them. There was a real connection there. And of course, that comes in the lieu of praise, and they praise, and they're like, oh my God, and they clap. So, that immediately hooked me, I think. But it was also the allure. I mean, look, it's trying to like explain love in a sense. So, there's an attraction there, and I don't know why I was attracted to this thing so much. I'm trying to give it words, and I think my words can give it some justice, but part of it is still a mystery to me of why I was obsessed with this thing so much. But I also think, just to add to the idea of connecting with people, I think the idea of magic, I've always said that I was obsessed with magic even before I knew what it was. And that's to say that there's something about the feeling that I was seeking that, yes, this thing called magic tricks that this magician did for me as a 9-year-old or 8-year-old made me feel, I was like, okay, I'm following something here. There's something here. And it didn't stop when I learned the trick, which is where it stops for most people, because they realize like, oh, it's a stupid little trick. Let me keep going on. And it was just like, for me, it was more like, no, that's just this. I'm seeking something else, and I'm gonna, and so I think most people that make it, to become, I think, really, really blossom, I guess, as a magician, have a similar story where like and the other truth is that most people have learned a trick in their life, and that was it. That was like, okay, cool. Either they were good, they were bad, or some did it a little longer, but there's no attraction or purpose there.
I love how you said that it was a tool that you used to connect with people. And once you realized that you could connect with people, would you go to school and did you start practicing on people? Like,
yeah, everywhere that I could.
That must have been so cool.
Well, you're not so competent at the beginning, so it's cool sometimes. But yeah, there's a sense of cool for sure. There's also a sense of not knowing how to carry that cool. That's a whole other responsibility. Like, there's people, hey, this is the guy that could do the thing, and now they're putting you in front, on the spot. And so it's like having to deal with all of that was interesting, but for sure things I've experienced.
Yeah. I mean, like anything else, I mean, it takes practice and refining your craft. Talk a little bit about that. Like once you knew it was, and then like anything else, you wanted to continue to get better. What were habits that you incorporated to just build upon your skill set, and how important were they for you?
Very important. I've thrown my life at this art and these skills, and so that's it breaks up into two things. How I would spend my time getting good at the raw technique and technical part of it is by doing it. So I would always have a deck of cards in my pocket or nearby. Right, I probably have one. Yeah. So I would always keep a deck of cards everywhere I go, and so cards are cool because, after buying that magic coloring book, I realized, like, okay, you can keep buying tricks, which are very expensive, or you buy one deck of cards, which is a real deck of cards you can get anywhere, doesn't matter what they are, and you can learn a whole bunch of literally infinite amount of card tricks, literally infinite. I mean, they just keep going and going and going and going and going and going, and then I learned, that there's like flourishing and guys can do this stuff. So this is me all day as a kid, right? Watching TV in the bathroom, in the car with my dad. I'm just cutting and playing with cards. And so this immediately gets my hands engaged into what I'm doing. And then the other part of getting good at it was doing it. Part of what I do, like comedy, is an example where you can't do comedy in your house. You know what I mean? You gotta do it in front of the people. Yeah. And it's like, which means, the part that you suck is in front of people. You know what I mean? And it's dealing with that as well. That's what I was saying earlier about, it's cool, but it's kind of like, it's not very cool maybe for the comedian the first day, because it's like
when you bomb.
Yeah, you have to keep bombing kind of. And sometimes you hit, and then sometimes you bomb, and sometimes you hit and you keep bombing. And part of it is like, trying to find a good balance between that, because it's only through bombing that you get good. Similar to what I do, there's
It's so funny because I actually did a stand-up comedy when nice. So my public speaking coach, he got into comedy, and there's Stanford Comedy Club here in downtown Stanford, and he was like, go to this open mic every Wednesday. You should do it. And I'm like, okay. Like I feel like I'm funny when it's like me and my boys like sitting around the table. I can make them laugh, and I'm like, all right, fuck it, I'll do it. So I go, and I got this like great joke. My dad's incorporated into it, and I go up, and it's not a big crowd. It's like 10, 15 other like aspiring comics, and didn't get a single laugh. And it's so much harder than you even think it is, bro. But like, for me, I was just like, I did it. Like, that was awesome to even try. But I have like a great respect for any performing artist who like goes up there in the early stages of their career and is comfortable with failing, frankly. And, you saying that it was the same thing with your craft is unbelievable. When was the first time that you just like, actually, let's talk about the first time that you performed and you crushed it. What was that feeling like? Or can you tell that story?
The first time with my grandparents in front of it. I think if that would have went bad, maybe I wouldn't be here. I mean, those were the first great moments, and that was my audience, my family. Outside of that, it started with, my mom telling a friend, hey, my son does magic, and he show you something, and getting a laughter. The one that's caught on camera and maybe helps me remember a little bit better is like, I'm probably like 8, 9 years old, and there's like footage of me having been invited to this kid's like birthday party, and I had just gotten my communion done. So I must have been like 10, actually. Yeah. I think that's when I did my communion. And, I did this, and this was the first time that I think I had been in front of strangers who were my age.
Okay.
And that was a certain kind of intimidating, right? Because it was like, I've done it for my parents and my grandparents. I've done it for a couple of their friends, 1 or 2. Now these are kids my age that kind of would judge me on my level.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm not cool to them, which matters more. But it was, and they don't know me, right? So they're not like, they're not going to just be nice because.
Yeah.
But it was great. And I think that, again, it was just like another, like slaying of a certain kind of dragon for me. I was like, whoa.
Confidence building.
This is cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so awesome, man. And, as you just commit yourself to this craft, how did your family, like, hey, like when I grow up now, I just want to be a magician.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how my parents would have reacted coming from India and wanting me to be a doctor or a lawyer or a professional of some sort. If I came home and was like, I'm going to be a magician when I grow up, I don't know what my dad would have said. How did that play out?
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not easy. They're not. My mom wasn't necessarily for it. She she didn't even take it seriously. Really, she just thought it was annoying. Like, sure, you could be your thing, but my dad, on the other hand, was a little bit more open minded. He at least entertained the conversation, or he at least sort of helped me develop questions around that. Okay, really, what would you do? How would you do it? What would you do? You know what I mean? Are you
Yeah.
where is this, like in a train? Where are you trying to do this magic stuff? So I think that he's a big reason why I was able to, pursue it, but also see it through.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think, with my dad, when I started my business and I quit my regular job, he was very much projecting his fear, because I think parents will always want whatever's safest for you.
Right.
And he was very much like, "Are you sure? Like, I think that's crazy. You have a good job. You have good health insurance." And, I did it. And now he's like one of my biggest fans, and he's so supportive, because I think to a level, he's a little jealous, where he was like, okay, he just went after whatever he wanted to do, where, like maybe he would have wanted to do that. He ended up working for IBM for 40 years, and he did a great job, made a living, and built a great life for my family. But when it comes to, like, I think that generation is very much about taking the safe route. And, our generation is more about, like, follow your heart and do what makes you happy and connect with a lot of people. I love that you did mention connecting with people. Using your skill set. As you grew your skill set, you jumped into the mentalism. That's a crazy way to connect with people. Not crazy, but you know what I mean. That's just like a very different way to connect with people. How did the magic transition into mentalism?
I always grew up around mentalist and mentalism, because it's really, part of magic as a study. I like to see magic like martial arts. This is my analogy of it. And it can be as trivial as you want it. It can be the karate, next door for kids. And it can be that, or it can be the thing that kills you, right? It could be this thing, or it could be UFC. I mean, it can just take on different forms. And I grew up seeing different forms of mentalism, some that were like karate, that were just like so trivial that I was like, okay, that's not interesting. Some that were like, a little bit too unbelievable, some like kung fu, something that was like, okay, you're trying to sell me on some sort of martial arts that you're saying what it's this,
Yeah.
but it's like, I don't know if that even exists, what that is. So what I became really interested in was like, what is the magic that is real? Like how close can we get there? And what is real and what is magic, and we can get there. And at least from an experiential point of view, most educated adults, when they were watching mentalism, couldn't do what they could do with like magic. Oh, it's just it's up your sleeve. It becomes much harder to do that. And so the experience is much different. And so I realized it was such a great way to continue my love of connecting with people in this magical space. You know what I mean? Because that's what it is eventually. It's only that I utilize mentalism as a way to open up the mind of adults, what I would call sophisticated, educated adults.
Yeah. I mean, that's wild, because you're right. Like, people like see magic shows, and some people will approach it with a level of skepticism, like where there's a logical way that happened. And then they'll just tell them that, and then they won't really believe that it was a trick or whatnot. But when it comes to the mentalism component, you can't really explain that other than acknowledging a really profound connection on a different wavelength.
Or what I'd like to say is just coming to terms that you don't know. That's all it is. Some people come up with esoteric ways, some people come up with trivial, but really the goal is to get you to a point where you just stop and say, I just don't know.
Yeah.
And that is the genuine truth. You don't know. That's okay. It's okay to not know. So magic, I think, was supposed to do that, only that it became this answer of like, oh, it's a trick.
Yeah.
The truth is you still don't know. But
yeah.
it lets you leave the theater thinking, okay, at least I know it's a trick.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. With mentalism, people leave, but the truth is you don't know. And how sobering can that be, yeah, we can get into that whole thing, but
let's
that
get
is
into
in
it.
essence
Yeah.
what I think I'm trying to do is get people to a point of I don't know. And in a world that you have your phone on you, and for the most part, there's a superstition that we live called we know everything. We know so much. We even know the things we don't know. When you see my show, you realize there are things even outside of that, even outside of your, almost in your blind spot. What I mean by the things you know that you don't know, it's like, all right, dude, I know I don't know the trick, but I know it's a trick. See, that's something I know that I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's certain things I didn't even consider. And that's kind of like when you see my show, there's certain things like it comes like, oh, whoa.
Damn sure.
And ideally, or, I think I'd love for people to follow that. But even if it's just for a second, come see the show and feel that, because it's a break in pretty much normal life, which is just answers at your fingertips. Google, now with ChatGPT,
it's even wilder where answers are so readily available.
Right.
So your career has obviously grown. You got a great following on Instagram. You've performed in front of amazing people, and I want to talk a little also about how you got into the TEDx talks, and I really want you to walk me through the competition, the Apollo, because that was a hallmark of your career. So let's jump into that first.
Okay. By the time I'm in high school, I've done magic to my classmates, to the teachers at this point, but it wasn't something that I took on very seriously, mainly because, hormones are kicking in, you know what I mean? Testosterone's high. My life at that time is that. It's not magic. And to the point where I'm not going to school, I'm cutting class, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And, it wasn't until like some friends of mine that were like, yo, man, you got a real skill. Like you should be showing this to people. I don't know why you show it to us, but like, we can't help you with this. Like you should, and eventually a teacher, and I think the vice principal, one of these, like, one of the people said, listen, we have a thing coming up where like, they're like, I don't know what the connection was with the school and Showtime at the Apollo, but Showtime at the Apollo was hosting a teenage competition. And, we would be going up with other people. It wouldn't just be people in the school, but we could get in, or we could at least try out and stuff. And so I was able to get in, literally with the support of all my boys. You know what I mean? I was almost going, like, they were almost dragging me there, basically dragging me there. And, at this time, we're in the 2000s. I'm probably 2007, 2007, I think it is. And, big white tees, big baggy pants. This is my style at the time. I'm wearing, braids. I don't have whatever a magician's supposed to look like. I just look like a kid in the Bronx. You know what I mean? Because at the time, I'm going to high school in the Bronx. And I show up on this stage, you know what I mean? And I remember the people that came up before me was like a band. Like, they were the competition. Like, it was a band that came up before me. And then another singer, she was like an amazing singer. I was like, oh my God, and then I came up, and Ed Lover was there also. Kiss FM, I think, was on hosting the event, and Ed Lover was behind me. And what I had done was, most of the tricks that I had learned were things with like stuff from around the house, newspaper, a cup, bottle of water. This is the stuff that I would use. I don't have boxes. I don't have no hat. I don't got no bunny. I don't got no nothing like that. I just got regular stuff. But with those regular stuff, I was able to do magic. I could take this one piece of paper, make them thousands of pieces of paper that look like snow. Then I would take water and turn it into snow. But I did it all with Ed Lover stuff. When people saw that, when they saw this kid that they thought I was going to rap or dance or do something, grab a newspaper from behind them, take the water, it's turning into snow. They're like, it took them like at least 20 seconds to realize, like, are we watching a magician? Like, what just happened? And the crowd went crazy, and I got a standing ovation, and we locked it in.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, that obviously must have been a huge confidence boost. And
it launched the career for sure.
It launched your career. You said it previously, your mom was like, a little fearful for you. So that must have been amazing to show her, like, hey, Mom, like, we're good.
Well, at 16, it's hard to still convince her that we're good.
Yeah, she's like, go to school, do your homework.
100%. So, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
true
you get a
too.
couple $1,000 as a winner, but no, it's you're still, you know. But yes, at least in my heart,
Yeah.
I knew I'd found something.
Was
There
that like when you were that moment when you're like, this is my purpose?
Yeah, this was the verification. There's a better word I'm looking
Validation?
for. Validation from the world.
Yeah.
I loved it. My friends said they like it. This guy, such and such, my aunt, you know, but to see 2,000 people, you know what I mean? And that's different, you know what I mean? And at the time, we were well aware of what Showtime at the Apollo was. We knew, you know, booing and stuff. Even though the host did say, you know, these guys are kids, I don't think you're allowed to boo.
Yeah.
I ended up going back. I mean, you know, just to show you how real life is, I went back to defend the title. And because that's how the Showtime at the Apollo works. You don't just win. You win, and then you come back again and like that, and it starts to. So when I came back, it was I got a little cocky, got a little overconfident. I was like, oh, I breathe in, I walk this. This is what I does. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if I won first place without even trying, I could win first place trying a little bit. I'm gonna come up with new ideas. I'm gonna make a bird appear, and I'm gonna use an assistant this time. Mind you, I never did this stuff before. I don't have an assistant. I don't have no bird. So I'm trying to buy a bird last second. I'm trying to convince some person I just met, hey, could you help me? You're going to be my magic assistant. She's like, I don't know what to do. Don't worry. You just got to stand to this and that. Bro, the day of the event, I have butterflies in my stomach. I'm like, oh, man, I'm really nervous. And I remember getting up on stage, you know, touching the lucky wood that they make you touch before you get up on. There's like a piece of bark, a piece of like a trunk, tree trunk. And you get up on there. The first thing, I'm supposed to make the bird appear, which is supposed to come out of my pocket. And I'm like, bro, I don't feel no bird. And I'm on stage and I'm sweating. And I look behind me and I see a little bird walking on the stage. I'm like, oh, he's not supposed to be there. And the lady that's supposed to help me, she's off the stage. She's like, I don't even know. Am I supposed to go up on stage now? I'm like, oh, this is terrible.
Oh,
and I had like, it was like the silk is sticking out. And at this point, people were just like, instead of the 20 seconds of figuring out what this guy's supposed to do, they're like, this guy is terrible. Boo. And I just get a sea of 2,000 boos. And I don't really remember it because in my mind, I must have went black. Yeah. It blacked out. All I remember was I tried to stay positive. I was like, all right, thank you. Boo. All right. Good night.
Dude, that's so funny. That's such a stark contrast from the first one. But I mean, you know, the lesson that it taught you, it's like, hey, like I still got to work hard at this.
It shocked me. I never wanted to be booed like that again. Yeah. And it put me in my place, man, that I can't, you know, just take it for granted. You have a real live audience there. And as Seinfeld said, it's a sparring session every time you go out there.
That's awesome.
You know, even Dave Chappelle, who got once booed off, I don't know where. Look, this is, you know, they're not just bought in. You know, yeah, they might know who you are and that'll help, but this is for real.
Yeah.
You know, this is, yeah.
Dude, well, one of the things that I really liked that you shared was it was your boys who were just like, listen, man, like, what are you wasting your time with us for?
Facts.
You got a gift and you need to feature it. Like, get out of here.
Facts.
And I'm sure you still have that same circle of dudes that you've been with you for a while. What do they mean to you? And what does it mean to you to just have that community and how instrumental it was in your growth?
You know, I think I've changed exact friends since high school. I mean, I hung out with some hooligans. I mean, we still probably would be friendly if we saw each other, but yeah, you know, and the friend, and let me know that's not true necessarily. There are some that we stood close and we did go through that phase, and it meant everything to me. You know, I was specifically thinking of the guys that came with me to Showtime, but there were more that had this sentiment for me and saved my life in many ways because for sure, you know, I was such a knucklehead and maybe, you know, kids with talent like me, you know, using it for bad, it could have led me the wrong way. But I had great friends who saw that in me and great human beings who there's a documentary for, just as an example, that was made on me. These guys documented, you know, about 8 years of my grinding between right when I win Showtime at the Apollo to, you know, to my nonprofit work in my 20s. So they kind of, they covered a lot of years there. And kind of like 16 to 26, I think, almost 10 years. And in there, they interview one of my friends from high school who had just gotten out of prison. He had been in solitary confinement for a couple months. Really, really lived a hard life, made some bad choices, paid for them. And he's in the documentary when he comes out, and he's there sitting with me, and he's like, man, he's kind of giving me this vision. What would have happened if we would have went in there? He's like, you would have been the coolest dude in there because you would have been showing us all magic. You know what I mean? And he's joking, but it's like, damn, that was just as close as it could have been my outcome. And so again, giving back the grace to them because they had a certain kind of grace that they saw in me, so yeah, man.
But they almost like protected you.
100%.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. That's powerful. And like obviously the Showtime at the Apollo show, the first one was awesome, and then the second one, you came in cocky. Now, having learned from that second experience, what did you take away from that? And like, how do you not, like, you never...
I wish I could have said that I got really good at practicing, but I didn't. To this day, because again, I've always felt that it's so hard to practice. But even just taking it serious is the difference. Just not just assuming that I've got it. And again, maybe not practicing because it's very hard for me to practice because I like to connect. I like to be in the space, but I can be there mentally. I can be there with my attention. I can be there with my focus. And so there's almost everything that I do now, I intend to go with it with a certain kind of focus and intention, whereas that second event was sort of like, just putting it to rest. Oh, this is what I do.
Yeah, like I got this.
Yeah,
like that I got this mentality.
Yeah.
So you eventually end up doing the 2 TEDx's. How did that come about?
The first one came about. I had been eventually I'd create an act around my story, around my growing up in Brooklyn, getting into magic because of my grandmother, getting involved with gangs in high school, having my friends, this and that, and then refining magic in such a way that it led me to do a lot of nonprofit work in Central America. And so there was this whole coming about story that was magical within itself. And I would actually tell this story while doing visual magic. So like, as I'm saying, I remember getting into magic and my grandmother for Christmas, and all of a sudden there's like a present. So it was this illustration of this story. As I developed this act, I would, and also doing a lot of nonprofit work overseas, I would meet some really interesting people, one of which was a guy that was running a summit for Google called, I forget the exact same, but it was against extreme violence. That was the whole purpose of it. And they got me down to this is a long story to try to get to TEDx, but now that but this is how I got into this world of like speaking, and so they got me on stage. They were the first forum, in essence, to get me on stage where I performed this act and got to speak as well. And then from there, I met several people who were already attached to TED, different TEDx's and stuff. And so, the first one I did was London School of Economics, where I performed that act only, and that's online. And then later on with my work in Central America, there was one in Guatemala that actually I spoke at, where I kind of shared a little bit of my work out there and what I had learned.
That's awesome. And what was, as you're from Brooklyn, now you're in London, obviously your skill in itself has just yielded so much opportunity, and for you to just see different places and see like how other people live and just what's out there. I know you performed in front of several celebrities. Can you maybe share a couple stories about that and how those came across and how rewarding those were for you?
Yeah, I think one of the cool ones was also a big private Google event that we did. Young, I had barely been on to anywhere really. Ecuador. I've been to Ecuador. I've been to Dominican Republic, like the stories I told you.
Yeah.
I must have been like it was 2011, so I was 21 years old.
Oh wow.
I was 21 years old, 2011, and they invited me to. It's basically Google's like company, like for like their private like clients. It's really cool. It's like, imagine Google's like invite list.
Was it in San Fran?
No, they did it in AZ, and they had like 5-star hotel that they took over, and like everybody was like put up immaculately well and flown in and treated just like absolutely royalty. And I was on there as a guest and as a no, actually I didn't even perform or anything. Well, I performed close up, but no, that was it's just me doing magic, but I wasn't hired per se. And so that showing up there, meeting all these like Scooter Braun was there, the VP of Nike was there. Mark Cuban was there, and these are all people that I'm performing for at the time. So I have a video where I turn Mark Cuban's dollar into 100, and I'm like, I want you to keep it. And like this was like in my mind, I'm like, how do I have Mark Cuban remember me? But looking at that video, he was like kind of offended. He was like, dude, I don't need your fucking 100. Like, yeah. But to me, it was the best. It was the biggest gift. Like in my mind, if somebody had given me $100, I'd have been blown away. Like they took my dollar and turned it into 100, like, and then I could keep it.
Yeah,
that's like every ghetto kid, like kid in the ghetto's fucking dream, right? Yeah. You make more money and I get to keep it. Yeah. It's not like trick. You don't get to just put it in your pocket. I was like, I'm gonna make the dollar 100. To him, he's just like, this kid is gonna try to like, I don't need your money, kid. Like, and he's like, I'm gonna feel bad that I took your money. Like, no, like just keep your money. And I was just like, so I was like, okay. But that was the story. I did it for the Google Surge and his brother. Yeah, whole bunch of really cool Will.i.am. These are like some when I perform for them very, very young.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Like so as your career is growing, you have a daughter.
I do, and a son.
Daughter and a son.
Yes.
So you must be the funnest dad.
I think so.
But I know your daughter's 9. How's your son?
My son is 2.
Nice. And what has, I'm going to kind of turn into like a little serious, you have a growing career. Now you're a father. What has fatherhood been like for you?
It's been beautiful, man. I mean, it's I have lived listening to people always tell me, wait until this, wait until you have to live by yourself, wait until you have to get a real job, wait until you get a family, wait until you have kids, as if the magic is supposed to die, as if something is supposed to end. It hasn't ended for me. It hasn't ended in my career. Hasn't ended with any of the stuff that they told me. And so it didn't end with my kids, and we had, tough moments, but like, it's a beautiful thing, and they, it's literally magical. You know what I mean? And I wish sometimes, look, it's hard, right? Like, we can explain about the hard stuff, but I don't live there. I live in, like, all the really cool things. Maybe mom would think differently because she has, no, but, moms have it hard, so that's what I'm saying. I'm having more grace for them. But, for me, man, it's, like, effortlessly, and thank God, I have a great, partner, and mom is just always on key, so maybe my job is just, but it feels like, kids are awesome, man,
yeah.
And especially when you're not trying to change them or you're not trying to mold them the way, like you just let them be, and even you learn from them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what does it mean to now you live in the suburbs and you're raising your kids out here in a safe community. How much did it mean to you to provide that for your children after experiencing what you did growing up and the fears that you saw and your parents had for you?
Beautiful thing. I mean, it's a beautiful thing that I get to experience. I don't think they get to experience it as much, which is a good distinction that I make for myself, which is, you got to realize what things are for you and what things are for them, and sometimes as parents, we can put that on our kids. We did this for you. And it's just like, you did it for you.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing. I get to experience it. So yes, it feels beautiful. Yes, it's like buying the car of your dreams. You know what I mean? And it means something to you. This actually means more than that because it's like, oh, it's my kids, and they get to live in a world that I didn't grow up in and I didn't get to see. But part of that beauty is hidden in the fact that I experienced something else as well. So they don't get to see that beauty, but they can be aware of it. They can be conscious to it. So I do, they do have a very sense of like, of gratitude. And maybe my older daughter more because, we were in Yonkers before we moved out to the suburbs.
I used to live in Yonkers too.
Yeah, and not the nice part of Yonkers. We were like...
Me too. I used to live in Getty Square.
Yeah, I was there exactly 2 blocks. I was in Waterview Towers over,
The ones behind it, right?
Yeah.
Behind the train station, right?
Not but not in the bad side, not the new buildings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Waterview Towers are the ones.
I used to live at the end of Buena Vista.
Okay, we weren't far from each other, but
Yeah.
you know, roaches, rats, the whole nine. You know what I mean? Like, you know, stabbings outside the building, like, you know, borderline projects.
Yeah.
You know, and even though I was doing well, it was, it's hard times out here. You know what I mean? And trying to put everything together and saving up and the whole nine and the economy and so to finally do it, it's such a like relief and such a milestone and I'm so grateful for it. But yeah, seeing my kids grow up now, it's like realizing, okay, this was beautiful for me.
Yeah.
What does their life look like if this is the soil, if this is the environment that they get to blossom in? And I don't think anything bad of it in a sense. I think they should be aware of the world. They should know what's up. You know what I mean? So it gives some color to what they're actually living in. It helped me going to Ecuador and seeing DR, and so she's been around. I've been taking her around. But I think she hopefully will do even more beautiful things and bigger things. And
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like the sign of being a good parent, offering your kids a better life than you had, like your parents did for you and your grandparents did for them. And I think that's really parenting in its simplest. Just provide them a better life than you had. And that's amazing. And I'm sure your mom loves her grandchildren. And you must have a massive family since you have 3 siblings on each side. How many nieces and nephews do you have?
everybody's still everybody's still young on my dad's side.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's a 10 years difference.
Yes. I did lose a sister on my dad's side, and thank you. And my mom's side, it's only my older brother has.
Okay.
So it's only me and him right
Well, they're
now.
due a
Him
bunch
and
of
I.
them. So like give them like 10, 15
They're
years.
gonna this is gonna be a big family.
Christmas
You're
is
right.
going to be huge.
Do you have kids?
I don't.
You
Not
want
yet.
kids? You see that
I
in
do
your
want
future?
kids.
Okay.
I do want kids, and I think I didn't for a very long time. And honestly, working with Ashley and Carlos, like really opened my mind to how much of a gift children are, and to that I'm eternally grateful. But also seeing a lot of friends who are my age and them having kids and leaving what they learned in their children, watching them grow, and it's a beautiful thing. I think kids are in the plan. When it happens, it happens. But I would love to have kids. I know my dad, and damn sure wants to.
How old are you?
I'm 38.
Okay.
So I got to get it soon. And I've been in a relationship for 10 years, and we're in this place where we're building.
Gotcha.
And I'm excited for what the future holds. But I love kids, and I used to be one of those people, man, who's like, like fuck them kids. You know what I mean? I hate that.
That's why I say kids are not for everybody. That might be you.
But like now, it's just like the thing I love about children is that I can just talk to them normally, and they're like innocent. And even if like, I love communicating with kids because it's like, there's no stress. You know what I mean? They're not thinking about bills. They're not thinking, like it's just such a cool interaction where sometimes talking to adults is work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's like, God damn, just like loosen up. It's not that big of a deal. So it's true. And, when you talk to a kid, they're just chill. And, I love that, man. I love that.
That's true.
But, just kind of pivoting to like, the whole theme of this is finding purpose. And I feel like, you have done that, and you've had a ride in really establishing your purpose and embracing it and growing through it. What does purpose mean to you?
Can I ask you first? Purpose, I think, in essence, is pointing at why what you're here doing. And I think that I'm still putting words to my purpose, or finding the right language of my purpose, and maybe that is life. In essence, it's just that. It's just finding ways to explain what it is that your purpose is. Meaning it takes different phases and faces. Right now and for a long time, it's taken this phase of magic and mentalism. And I'd like to believe that that purpose will continue no matter what the face it takes, you know, because it's become clear to me throughout the 27 years that I've been doing this that it's the same energy source. It's just manifesting in different forms. So finding purpose, I think for me, is kind of like when I can start adding language to this energy. So, you know, again, right now it's been, you know, magic. So my purpose has been, you know, to bring this to the world and share it.
Well, you know, that's an awesome answer, because one of the things that I've noticed with all my guests, the ones who are most locked into their purpose are the ones where they prioritize connectivity with others. And that's exactly what you said earlier, where, you know, I harness this magic and I poured myself into it because it gave me an opportunity to connect with others. And maybe initially it was for attention but then you looked at it as a tool to connect with others and make other people happy and bring joy in their life. And that's the underlying message I get from all the purposeful folks that I've spoken to, where it's not really about them, it's about what they can offer other people. So I love that, man. And I love the ebbs and flows of your story, and how, you know, I'm a firm believer, man, that like people who've been through real dark times or have seen dark things are able to really provide the most value to people along the way throughout their journey, because they have that unique perspective, which is rooted in gratitude, because they've seen very ugly. And, you know, I think that like you emulate that, because when you performed, like, you just bring joy, bro. And then that's like, there's not many people who do that. You know, there's not many people who have that type of energy. And I like how you talked about energy, because energy is a huge thing. And oftentimes people ignore energies. And, you know, when you ignore energies, you know, sometimes you shouldn't have, and the consequences can happen. So what advice would you give to someone who is in a space where they may not be living as purposefully as they would want to? They don't know their purpose, or they're lost.
I think most confusement comes from thinking about something and you spiral into, you think about it and then you can't find it. And so maybe you think more, but it's just more confusement. And so purpose and these kind of things, I think, are found by feelings, meaning you need to do. So for that person, just do something. But I've done something. Good. How did you feel? I felt bad. Good. Now you know what you don't like. Mm-hmm. Can you do the opposite of that? I don't know where. Good. Can you find some? See, when you start following what you like, what you'll notice starts to go away is the excuses between the space of you and it. Meaning, there's always something in your way, for sure. Yeah. We're human. Like, there's other people, other things, other wants, other people. But I think that there's a simple like gauge in that you already have a certain, you know, compass. The problem is you can't listen to that compass because your mind immediately comes to the rescue with answers and facts for you. So an example could be, see, if I were to listen to that mind at whatever age, right, of magic, it would have told me, are you kidding me? You need to make a living. Da, da, da. I mean, it would have had, and all those points are valid. Those are all valid points that I've now handled. But you can't handle it until you can even make it a possibility. And so for yourself, get yourself out of your own mind, get yourself into doing, and get yourself into feeling how you feel about what you're doing. Not what you think about what you're doing, because what you think is going to be terrifying. Because your mind is there to show you clarity, which should work, and it should do that. But you can't go there first because it's a mountain you're trying to climb. It's why people don't climb mountains. Are you crazy? I'm going to sweat. I'm going to do this. If that's what leads you, then you won't do anything in your life. Yeah. The person that climbs a mountain didn't start there. They started with this other thing called, I really want to get to the top. Then they deal with, oh my God, this is going to take me forever. But this whatever now, this forever is now a journey for them. Mm-hmm. So the way I think you should start is by listening to that compass, listening to like, yo, what do I not like doing? And sometimes we're stuck there because we have to, whether that's a job. And so it's like, Devonte, I can't just leave my job. It's like, fair enough. But at least now you're aware of it. You know you don't like that, and you know you want to be going somewhere. And the question was, how do I know it? There you go. That's as much knowing. Will it be clear to you exactly all the time? No. And that's okay. That's just, that's part of the fun, is finding out what it is. But you at least have the direction inside of you.
Dude, I love that answer. I'm so grateful to have you today. Devonte Rosario, world-class mentalist, #1 at Showtime of the Apollo at the ripe age of 16. Love that, man. Please tell my audience how they can reach you and any information that you might have about upcoming shows or whatnot, by all means.
Yeah, we're going to be going on tour soon, so you want to be in tune with that. I'm mostly on Instagram and sometimes YouTube as well, but Instagram is DEVONTE, and then the word magic, Devonte Magic. And then on YouTube, it's youtube.com/Magic Devonte. So just switch that around. So it's MAGIC Devonte. That's my channel. We got some cool videos up there. But follow me on Instagram so you can know when the next tour dates are.
Awesome, dude. Appreciate having you, man.
Thank you,
look forward to collaborating with you in the future.
Anytime, my brother.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Nice.